rest of them couldn't be with us, but this is a very, very exciting day. And we're so thankful for what God has done. And when Brother Matt says you are important, you are very, very important. Because, you know, if we hadn't had Sunday school and been raised in church when I was little, I probably wouldn't be here today. Because the things that I learned when I was your age helped me when it come time for me to serve the Lord. And that's what we want to do with you all. And today I want to focus on there is no age limit on how we can serve the Lord. Sometimes you think, I may be too small, I may be too young, and sometimes us older ones can think, and there's some in here that's older than me. But, well, what can I do? You know, you're young, you have all this energy, our young people, and then when you get older, you don't have as much energy as you used to, and it takes you longer to do something. But there is no age limit on what we can do for the Lord. We've been studying about the children of the Bible, and today is Children of the Bible Part 3. And today I want to talk about a little boy that was dedicated to the Lord before he was born. Can any of you think who that might be? No, not Jesus. We're still talking in the Old Testament. Well, his mother's name was Hannah. I don't know if that rings a bell or not. Well, you'll find out. And today we're going to talk about how God used him as a little boy. His mama's name was Hannah, and she was very, very sorrowful because she didn't have any children. And I really don't know a true woman that gets married that doesn't want to have children. We all love to have children. And sometimes it's kind of hard for people. And she was very, very sad because she didn't have any children. And she would go to the temple with her husband every year to pray. Now, it just wasn't 3 minutes from your house or 15 minutes from your house or half an hour, 45 minutes. It was a long way to go. She didn't have a nice car or whatever them four-wheel things, road runners or whatever that stuff is you guys ride in, or my golf cart. You know, she didn't have any of that. She either had to walk or probably ride a camel to get there. But she wanted a baby so bad that she would go to the temple every year with her husband and pray and ask God to give her a child. Well, one day she was in the temple, and Eli the priest was there, and she was crying and praying, and I can understand because I was like that one day. I wanted a child so bad. And so Eli came over and he said, "What's wrong?" He thought maybe she had been drinking too much and she was drunk. She said, "No, I've been praying and asking God for a child, and he hasn't seen fit to give me one." And Eli said, "You know what? It's going to happen. You just be encouraged. It's going to happen." And I've got to think she went away that day with hope in her heart that Eli, the priest, had told her it was going to happen. Well, do you think it did? Yes, it happened, and God gave her a little son, and she had told the Lord the last time she prayed, "If you will give me a little son, I will give him back to you to serve you." And so she did. The Lord gave her a little boy. She called his name Samuel. Now, that has a meaning, and it means asked of God. That was really, really special to her, and she made sure that his name was in reference to God who was so good to her and gave him. Well, the Bible doesn't tell us how old he was, but historians tell us that he was between 3 and 5 years old. And she knew it was time to take him back to the temple. Now, who do we have in here that might be between 3 and 5? Only one I could think of was Dirk. How old is she?
She's 4.
She's 4. Okay, that's her, and I think Dirk is what, 3 maybe, something like that. He's 4. Now, come here, Anison. Look at this, and when you think of little Dirk, how would you like for them to be taken to a place far away from you and left there, and you only got to see him once a year? That would be hard, wouldn't it? Be very, very hard. Thank you, Anison. You can sit down. And I've got to think that that day when Hannah took Samuel back to the temple and she told Eli the priest, I'm the lady that prayed and God gave me a little boy. And I promised God I would bring him back to him to serve in the temple. And I'm bringing him back today. Now, when I sat and thought about this, it just kind of tore at my heartstrings. She prayed so long for that child, but she made a promise to God what she was going to do. And she carried through with that promise. You know, when we make a promise to God, we better keep it. And you know what? God was so pleased with her. When she went back home, he gave her more children. Isn't that wonderful? I got to thinking, oh, that was just wonderful that God blessed her and she had something to occupy her time. But she left little Samuel there, and Eli said, I will teach him about God, and I will teach him how to serve God. And you know, I kept wondering, let me look at this through maybe Samuel's eyes. And what do you think he was thinking when his mom and dad left him there with this old man that he didn't know, and they left? But I have to believe Hannah was a godly woman, and I really believe that she had been preparing Samuel for this day. The Bible doesn't tell us that, but I think from a mother's heart, and she knew what she had promised God, she had already been talking to him about that. Well, you know, she came back every year, the Bible tells us, to the temple with her husband to see Samuel, and she'd bring him a new coat to wear because she loved him, and he got to see his mother once a year. But that would be hard, wouldn't it? Only see your mother once a year? But that's not the end of the story. Let's think about Samuel for a few minutes. When you think about how does a little child like that serve the Lord? Well, now he lived there with Eli in the temple, and there was other people there. And now, do you all have jobs you have to do around the house? Yeah. And when you're smaller, you just kind of get jobs that fit your age. Then as you get older, you get more responsibility. And I've got to feel that that's really what happened to Samuel. And not only that, he got to work around the temple and probably clean up. They brought sacrifices. It had to be clean. I'm sure the floor had to be mopped, and everything had to be dusted. Everything had to be kept really nice. God required that for his temple, okay? He maybe even had to help clean the oil lamps because they didn't have electricity, just flip on a switch. They had oil lamps. I have some oil lamps. And if the power goes out and I want to use them, you got to make sure the wick is straight and clean. You got to make sure the glass is clean so that the light can shine through. And the lamps are filled with oil, so if the power goes out, you don't have to try to do all that in the dark. You've got to have them ready. So I'm really thinking that Samuel probably did a lot of that stuff. But he didn't only do that. What do you guys have to do every day? Go to school. He had to learn to read, and he had to learn to write. And you've had things you've been memorizing in Sunday school, haven't you? Well, you know what? Samuel lived in a time when they had lots and lots of laws they had to remember. And if he was going to work in the temple with Eli, he had to know all of those things that God required of him. So Samuel's life just wasn't a play day every day. He had things he had to do. So when Eli promised him promised his mother that she would teach him, and Eli did. Well, you know, one day when Eli was, the historians tell us he was about 12 years old. The Bible doesn't really say, but they have studied this out, and I looked up several things, and they said somewhere between 10 and 12, but they thought he was about 12 years old. He went to bed one night, and he was sleeping, and all of a sudden he heard somebody say, "Samuel." We woke up. "Oh, Eli's calling me." So he runs into Eli's bedroom. He said, "I'm here." And Eli says, "I didn't call you. You just go back and lay down." I mean, they maybe kind of thought he was dreaming or something. I don't know. So he went back and laid down and went to sleep. Pretty soon he heard it again. "Samuel." Got up, ran in, and "Eli, I'm here." Eli said, "I didn't call you. Go back and lay down again." Well, I got to think that maybe Samuel was getting a little puzzled. What was going on here? But he went back and laid down. Now, me, I would have trouble going back to sleep, but children don't usually have that problem. Pretty soon he heard it again. "Samuel." There it is again. It has to be Eli. And he got up and ran in there. Well, Eli realized that God was trying to talk to Samuel. God was calling him. So he said, "Samuel, you go back to bed and you lay down. And the next time you hear somebody say, 'Samuel,' you say, 'Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth.'" So Samuel went back and laid down. And I've got to, in my mind, I'm thinking like a 12-year-old, you've got to, okay, because Eli didn't say they didn't say in the Bible that Eli said it's God speaking to you. But he said, "You say, 'Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth.'" So he went back to bed, and pretty soon Samuel heard it again. "Samuel." He just laid there, and he said, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." You know, I want to stop here just a minute and talk about that. When you get to a certain age, you can learn all kinds of stuff when you're this age, and we do our best. It's the parents' job to teach them. And sometimes you don't like what your parents tell you you have to do. But how many times has your parents said it's for your own good? When you don't like it and they say, "The spanking you're getting is for your own good," you don't see how it is, but it works out that way. So anyhow, when sometimes we don't like the messages we get, but it's for our own good. When God starts speaking to you and you start feeling guilty because you've done something, that's God speaking to you through your conscience. And you need to listen what God's telling you that he wants you to do. So Samuel laid there, and God talked to him. But you know what? Samuel was very, very troubled by what God told him. Now, at 12 years old, that's a young age to be getting the message he got from God. And the Bible said he was very troubled. It made him sad, and he didn't want to tell Eli what God had told him. But the next morning, Eli seen he was troubled. And he said, "Samuel, tell me what the Lord told you. Don't you hold back anything. Tell me what God told you." Well, Samuel said, "Okay." So Samuel sat down and he said, "Eli, God told me that he's not pleased with your sons. They cannot be priests in the temple because they have been doing bad things. They have been doing things that go against God's law. And God's not pleased, and he's not going to let them be priests." Well, the history tells us Eli had been a judge and a high priest for over 40 years. He was 98 years old, and he or in his 90s. He was 98 when his sons died, but in his 90s, and it made him so sad. But he knew what God said was true, because his sons had been misbehaving in the temple, in God's house. And God had told Eli to deal with it, but Eli didn't. That's a very important message. It's not one that really is for you children, but it's an important message for all of us. When God tells us to do something, we better do it, because there's bad circumstances if we don't. Well, Eli was very sad, but he knew God was telling the truth, and he knew Samuel had got the message from God. Well, one day, Samuel just went on to serve the Lord and work in the temple and do what he needed to do. One day there was a battle between the Israelites and the Philistines. Now the Philistines were against the Israelites. And there was a fierce battle. And all of Eli's sons was killed in that battle. And they had to come back and tell Eli, your sons have been killed. And they said Eli was 98 years old and blind, and it was too much for him to handle, and he died. How sad would that be? Because, he had to know in his heart, he didn't do what was right by his children. And we have no record that, they changed their lives. So we need to be careful to always do what God tells us to do. And what was Israel going to do now? Their high priest, their judge was gone. But Samuel just kept serving the Lord and doing what was right. And he had a good reputation with the people because he'd done what was right. And the Bible tells us he was the last judge that Israelites had, was Samuel. And Samuel appointed David to be the next king. And when Samuel died, he was 90 years old. So when I read this story and I thought about it and I prayed about it, the thing that came to my mind is there is no age limit on how we serve the Lord. That just come to me. There is no age limit. Samuel learned to serve the Lord at a young age, and God blessed him. And I've got to believe, if we could look back over the years when Eli was young, he knew how to serve the Lord. He started out right, but he let sin work, and God was not pleased. His life did not end on a happy note because he allowed sin. You know what? I'm thinking, and I thought about this, and I want to ask you all a question this morning. This is the house of God that we have dedicated to come and worship God in. Do you think God expects us to keep it nice? So as children, what can you do at your age to make sure the house of God is respected and kept nice? What do you think you can do? Well, what do you do at home? Do you pick up your trash off the floor and put it in the trash can? Well, see, you can come to the house of God and do that. Don't leave your candy wrappers or stuff on the floor or on the seats. You know how many times when Sister Janice comes to clean, I find paper in the sides of the seats and sucker sticks stuck in the pencil holders and paper in the back? See, you're young enough. Sometimes as older people, we're clear up here. You guys are closer to the floor. And you can see things maybe we can't see. And so you can be helpful in keeping God's house clean by doing all of that. That's a big help. And if your mom and daddy helps come and clean, you can help come clean. You can straighten up the books. I mean, really, every week before you leave, you can make sure they're all straight in the back and you didn't leave any paper in the song racks. And when Sister Janice comes, I have to pick everything up off the floor so I can sweep, because there may be some dirt under what you left on the floor. you know. So you can pick your stuff up and put it on the seat and make everybody's job easier. These are little things you can do. Downstairs in your Sunday school rooms, help your teachers pick up all the stuff and put it away. And when you go to the bathroom, wash your hands and dry them. Make sure the towels go in the trash can and not on the floor. You know, these are just little things that you can do. But more important, when you hear what God wants you to do in your life, we are the temple of God. And when we ask God to live in our hearts, He wants us to keep our lives clean so that we can be pleasing unto Him. So no matter what your age, you can work for the Lord. Now there's other things you can do. You can use your talents for the Lord. And I know God has given all of you a talent to sing. And some of them might not be on tune, but you can sing. Because sometimes I hear you singing when you're not even up here, okay? But God, that is one way we can serve the Lord, by presenting our talents and worship to Him. So remember this, no matter what your age, you can work for the Lord. Even if you're young, even if you're old like me, there's something we can do for the Lord. And now this morning, we're going to get to listen to you sing your praises unto the Lord. And all of us older people love to hear you do that. So we're going to ask Sister Terry to come. That's one way that you can serve the Lord, is by singing His praises. Okay?
We're going to sing two that kind of go along with her story. Remember this one? And then when we go to this one, we're going to sing this one through twice, okay? But we're going to start with Behold. If I don't get it too low. You ready? Behold, behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. Behold, behold, I stand at the door and knock, knock, knock. If any boy hear my voice, if any girl hear my voice, and will open, open, open the door, I will come in. Okay, sing louder, because they want to hear you, not me. I'm going to sing this one through twice. Okay? Your door's ready? Knock, knock, knock. I hear Jesus knocking. Tug, tug, tug. Tugging on my heartstrings. Thump, thump, thump. My heart started thumping when I heard Him knocking. Knock, knock, knock. I hear Jesus knocking. Tug, tug, tug. Tugging on my heartstrings. Thump, thump, thump. My heart started thumping when I heard Him knocking. Okay, we're going to sing two other ones, but they don't need the words for them because I'm pretty certain you guys know them. Because today is the groundbreaking, there was two other songs that I thought of that we should sing. The first one's going to be Building Up the Temple. Is that what we're trying to do? Yeah. Okay. Ready? Building up the temple, building up the temple, building up the temple of the Lord. Say, brother, won't you help me? Sister, won't you help me? Building up the temple of the Lord. Building up the temple, building up the temple, building up the temple of the Lord. Say, brother, won't you help me? Sister, won't you help me? Building up the temple of the Lord. The other one was My God is So Great. Ready? Ready? My God is so great. you, for you.
Okay, do you all follow me? We'll sing before we do our sticker.